generalizations. Oh, he's this and oh, he's the greatest that.
But it's not just the reaction. It's the constant overreaction.
Exactly.
And now it's almost like every play it happens. Like, oh, that's the greatest throw I've ever seen. Or, oh, that's the best run I've ever seen. That's the best hurdle. That's the best this. That's the best that. It's all the time.
Is Patrick Mahomes the greatest of all time? Well, of all time might be a little early, but since 2018 started, so Patrick Mahomes was a rookie last year, won the MVP. He's had 6,292 passing yards with 60 touchdowns.
Is that it?
The next best guy, and these are three superstars, juggernauts in this league. The next three guys are Tom Brady at 5,266 yards. So that's 1,000 yards less and 36 touchdowns. So 24 touchdowns less. Rodgers, 5,089 passing yards, 29 TDs, and Drew Brees, 4,400 passing yards with 34 TDs. Mahomes almost has him doubled in passing touchdowns and more than 2,000 yards throwing. So, Justin, if this guy stays healthy, Patrick Mahomes, let's overreact for a minute. Is he going to set records that possibly be unbroken for a long, long time?
I think he's going to definitely set a lot of records, and I think it could be an NBA type effect to him. He could be changing the game of the way that you saw a Steph Curry and even James Harden now, where the league is completely different, where it's all about 3-point shooting, and guys are going to set a lot of records, and the next wave that's coming up are watching these guys setting their game up to model what they're seeing. And I think that's what you're going to see a lot of kids do, is try to be the next Patrick Mahomes, make all these throws from all these different arm angles, the big arm. And look, some of that stuff is going to be difficult to do because you see the background with his dad was a pitcher and he played baseball growing up and all those things that happen. But look, it's not uncommon for kids today to play multiple sports. And when you're watching someone do all this stuff, you start to want to emulate your game after him. So I think he's definitely, if he stays healthy, and if he's in these type of offenses that are productive and could put talent around him, and when he signs his new deal, we'll have to see how that works itself out. But yeah, I mean, the rate that he's on, Eric, he's almost a lock every single week to get to 350 yards passing and at least 3 TDs. And hell, he might do it in a quarter. I mean, we saw him do it at Oakland where he had a better quarter than a lot of quarterbacks that have even had a game through 3 of tries this year. So he's outstanding. Having him in the AFC West, it's probably going to be a long decade, next 15 years, because he's going to be the guy Denver's going to have to get through. And once Brady retires, the Chiefs could step into that role where they could be the team that you're after to get to, and through the AFC to get to a Super Bowl, you could have to go through the Chiefs every year. The difference, I think, could be, again, the fact that Patrick Mahomes could set records on the field and he could set records in the terms of his contract. Tom Brady never did that. He allowed himself to build that team around him and keep pieces in place. I don't see that Patrick Mahomes is going to do that from the conversations that are out there and potentially getting $200 million and way over $100 million in guarantees. I don't think there's anything else that we can add to it, Eric. He's outstanding. There hasn't been a defense yet outside of what New England did to them in the first half of the AFC Championship that's really had much of an impact on slowing him down.
Yeah, I think he's going to be exciting for years to come. I do hope he stays healthy, just like I would hope the same thing for Tom Brady and Drew Brees and Aaron Rodgers and Daniel Jones and everybody, because I think the league is more dynamic when you have star quarterbacks at all of these different locations in big cities and big teams. It just makes it more fun to watch as a fan.
All right, Eric, that's a wrap for segment 1. When we come back, we'll talk about those road warriors. A lot of big-time victories in the NFL. Week 3 was an odd week. Some results that we expected, some results we didn't expect, including what Houston went into L.A. and did. Teddy Bridgewater got a big victory as well. I want to get your thoughts on the Cam Newton situation in Carolina and the holding penalties. They've been a disaster through 2 weeks, seem to go down in week 3. Will that trend continue into week 4? We'll talk about that more when we come back. So week 3, Eric, we had some big road wins. Houston had a big road win. Detroit, as you well know, got a big win in Philly. Had the Saints and Carolina all getting road wins. So which of those 4 teams surprised you the most? And I guess we could throw the Rams in as well. But of course, I don't know how big of a road win that is because the Browns are a dumpster fire themselves right now.
Well, I'm going to go with the Detroit Lions as the biggest surprise to me. I just thought the Eagles would come out a lot stronger than that at home. You know, the Lions, they've played well, but at the same time, they're kind of the sneaky 2-0-1 team. Like, what are you going to get out of them? And it seemed like Matt Stafford and Marvin Jones just had sort of ESP during this game. It's like every throw, Marvin Jones was open or available. So it just says more about the fact that Philly, I think, has entered this season thinking that they were going to automatically be a lot better than they were because Carson Wentz is healthy. They had some running backs. Our new running back out of Penn State put it on the ground a couple of times. They have receivers that are injured with Jeffrey and Jackson not playing. Then we have another receiver that continues to have concrete hands and alligator arms because he can't hold on to the ball. It's like he'll make one amazing play and then one really dumb play. Nelson Aguilar. From Detroit, I just never know what I'm going to get out of them. And so to me, that was the most surprising result because I think I expected some of these other teams. We talked about Houston probably having the leg up in their division at this point. If their defense plays well, I can see them giving teams a bit of a problem, even teams like the Chargers. That didn't surprise me as much as a team like the Lions, who are just perennially terrible, beating the Eagles at home when the Eagles are supposed to be good.
And look, Eric, Detroit's win was impressive to go into Philly and get that. And we didn't know what to make of this team because they've been mired in mediocrity for how long now. But they've got wins over the Chargers, now the Eagles. They had a big lead that they let go in Arizona and took that tie. So is this a team that in week 6, they're going to be able to sustain this? Or are we going to talk about them being 2-3-1 at that point?
Yeah, I think if they can win a lot of close games like this, then you have an opportunity for them to be relevant in this division. Although I don't think they're still going to contend with the Packers and then the Vikings, but I think they're going to be better than they were the last couple of years and maybe even better than we thought. I think belief is a big thing for Detroit because much like the Browns, much like I think the Bengals are dealing with, much like the Dolphins are going to deal with for the next decade, it seems, the Lions just have had so much losing happen. I mean, they haven't won a playoff game since Matthew Stafford has been there. The thought of that is crazy to me. As much as that guy has been paid and as much as he was lauded coming out of Georgia, they haven't had any success to speak of. I think they're just used to losing. If they go on and win a couple of these close games, now the Eagles had their chances to win that game. I mean, there was drops upon drops upon drops for Carson Wentz's receivers, and Carson has to be frustrated. I mean, hopefully he's a nice enough guy that he's not going to make an issue of it in the locker room and start to divide this team. They dropped a lot of passes in that game, and the Eagles could have scored more points. So Detroit was not that far away from losing this game either, but they didn't. And the score is what it is at the end of the game, and they win those games. I think that builds confidence in your locker room. And like you said, had they beat the Cardinals and they were 3-0, now you're looking at a city in Detroit who says our Lions have been terrible forever. Maybe this season could be something of a building block rather than just another mediocre year.
Yeah, they may regret that one because the North seems like it's divulging a little bit into what we thought the AFC South was, where you had maybe 4 teams that could compete depending on how things played out, how the injuries shook out. And I think you're seeing a little bit of that in the NFC North at this point. Green Bay, we're not sure what they're 3-0, but the offense has not looked great yet. And again, you got a new coach and you're trying to put all this stuff together. The Vikings have looked good at home, not so much on the road. And the Bears have been very up and down. So I think it's definitely a division that's not as top heavy as we thought that it was going to be. And it's been in the past with that. But let me ask you this about the Eagles. So they've been 3 straight weeks now. They've gotten themselves down by double digits. They were able to come back in week 1, weren't able to do it in weeks 2 or 3. Now they have a short week. They go on the road to Green Bay, whose defense has been playing much, much better than we've seen in years out of Green Bay. So how concerned are you with this Eagles team right now, especially the way Dallas is playing?
Oh, very concerned. I think I'm going to owe you a Tervis tumbler for this one because Dallas is going to win this division now. The realistic possibility is the Eagles go into Lambeau and become 1-3. And I think that's just a complete disaster for this team. They're dealing with a lot of injuries. They're dealing with disappointment. They also have a defense, to your point, that's just terrible. They're giving up so many early game points that they're putting Carson Wentz in a bad position each and every game. You look at the Packers and go, okay, 1 week their defense plays great. 1 week their offense looks better. 1 week, well, heck, this might be the week that their offense starts to click. They throw up 14 or 21 quick points on an Eagles defense, and that game's over. I mean, the Eagles won't win. I think this is a dangerous situation for the Eagles to be in. And Justin, I'm extremely disappointed. Now, again, injuries are a big deal. The running game has just not been what they were hoping with Howard and Sanders and Sproles. And I don't think Doug Peterson has that mix right. I mean, I was happier with the mix when they had Ajayi in there versus what they've got now, because it just doesn't seem to gel yet. It's like they don't know, are we going to use Jordan Howard? Are we not going to use Jordan Howard? We're going to give the ball to Sanders because he's quick. He's got a nice run to him, but then he fumbles all the time. And I just don't think they're clicking on all cylinders at all. So this is a big deal right now in Philly. This is a real big deal. I think they lose to the Packers this week. And then I think you've got a problem when you've got to go to play Dallas a couple of times. They're not going to win this division.
Yeah, definitely getting themselves in the early hole. Not good when your main competition is 3-0. So I think that's their issue right now. And they're so beat up. That's the other problem when you talk about this might not be the Eagles team. Look, they could get on a run and make a big push for a wild card spot towards the end of the year and be playing their best football at that point when they're healthy. It's just right now when you look at this team, they're down their big weapons that really help Wentz. And then you're depending on guys that should be your special teamers. They're failing him, or you're putting Nelson Aguilar in a spot where he's your top target. And that story's gotten blown up where you've got people in Philly who are catching babies out of windows and throwing Aguilar under the bus. So that's not the guy that you want out there as a wide receiver 3. Great. Not as your main weapon for Carson Wentz. So they might have a tough time there Thursday night. So maybe I just won't be texting you until Friday or Saturday. Maybe a little bit grumpy. So Eric, the other game I think that surprised me was what the Saints went into Seattle and did. This is another situation where maybe we've overrated Seattle some at this point because they barely hung on to beat the Bengals in week 1. They go on the road in Pittsburgh where you've got Roethlisberger with something wrong with his elbow. And then you bring in Mason Rudolph and they had to hang on in that game to get a win. And then they get trounced at home where the score was a lot closer than this game was throughout. This was a 33-14 game at one point. And then Seattle got a junk touchdown late and got another one as time expired off of, I think there was like 10 penalties. It felt like in that goal line situation, the game just wouldn't end. So were you impressed with what the Saints were able to do or more disappointed in Seattle? Or do you think Seattle, we just overrated them?
I think Seattle's often overrated because of Russell Wilson, and everyone is enamored by his game style and the fact that he just is a gamer and he'll win a lot of games just based on his talent level. But we've seen the Seattle defense just continually degrade over the past couple of years. They're losing players. They keep hemorrhaging good players off that Seattle defense. And it's not the same Legion of Boom that they've been. It's just simply not. When you have a team like the Saints who found a way to put up points quick, it becomes a bit more of a struggle for the Seattle Seahawks. So I just think that they're a different team than what we've given them credit for when they made those Super Bowl runs with Marshawn Lynch and Russell Wilson, Doug Baldwin. It's just simply not the same team. Now with the Saints, I don't want to overreact either on this because they didn't have the greatest of offensive performances here. Yeah, there's 33 points on the board, but Bridgewater still only had 177 yards. Kamara still just can't seem to have one of those breakout games. He only had 69 yards on the ground, although he did a lot of damage on the receiving end, which is obviously the value that he brings. But Michael Thomas, the big mouth, highly paid receiver now, who seems to be great friends with all of these guys making trouble, 54 yards. I mean, it just wasn't this big bang boom offensive performance that you're used to seeing from the Saints with Drew Brees and everything else. So I don't want to also overreact to them scoring 33 on Seattle because I think there's a mixture of things going on here where Seattle's probably overrated. The Saints probably caught them at a good time. And I don't know what to make of either one of these teams yet through 3 weeks.
No, and again, this is where when people just look at the stats, they say, oh, look at the Saints. They're going to be awesome. They're going to be fine with Bridgewater. Well, they got 2 touchdowns on the defensive side. They got 1 special team, I should say, on a punt return, and then they got a scoop and score that really changed the tone. And just like we talked about in segment 1 with Lamar Jackson, quarterbacks, especially younger guys or guys that aren't out there all the time, that are in more of the backup role, when you give them a lead, you can call things that they're more comfortable with. Bridgewater didn't break 200 yards passing in this game. He was 19 of 27. So he was efficient. He did a lot of his damage with Kamara in the pass game. They did enough to continue to move the ball. And what we've seen is Seattle's defense is definitely not the same as it was when it was a Legion of Boom. They've lost all those guys. Andy Dalton set all kinds of records in week 1 in Seattle in terms of passing yards. John Ross had a monster game. Then they go into Pittsburgh on the road, and then they let Mason Rudolph come in and get 2 touchdown passes on him. So definitely not the same defense. And I think when people saw what the Bengals did, they were like, wow, look at this team. The Bengals must be a lot better than we thought. And then you've seen them in weeks 2 and 3 struggle immensely. And I think Seattle is one of those teams where right now, when we're 3